Yevgeny Prigozhin spent almost a decade building the Wagner paramilitary group. It became central to Russia's war effort in Ukraine, and Prigozhin's troops helped to spread Russian influence across the globe, propping up allies of President Vladimir Putin in Africa and Syria. Now his death has sparked a flurry of speculation about the group's future. Western security officials are wondering who will take his place and what will happen to the mercenaries he once led. Who will run Wagner now? Dr. Jonah D. Dias Pereira, Senior Research Fellow at the Royal United Services Institute RUSI, told the BBC's World Tonight program that Prigozhin's death would likely lead to a certain revamping of the group. But she said that overall Wagner's operations would probably continue in much the same way as it had under Prigozhin's leadership. The organization will persist in the future, probably with another name. But it has already proved it has the capacity to adapt and to morph, she said. We have to look at Wagner not only as a single man, but as an ecosystem, as a hydra with many heads and many diverse interests in Africa. Ruslan Trad, a security analyst with the Atlantic Council, agreed. He told the BBC that Prigozhin's death would likely see someone with connections to Russia's military intelligence service, the GRU, installed to lead the group in his place. But he suggested that the main challenge for Putin may be finding someone with deep enough pockets to fund the paramilitary's operations, while not posing a direct challenge to his regime. They will try to find a new financier because Prigozhin was the main person with money there. Mr. Trad said, I think it will be more difficult to find a new financier because Wagner have good commanders. But money is important here. Maybe they will install someone from the close circle around Putin. Ben Oatbringer, a journalist whose documentary The Rise of Wagner charted the paramilitary's rise, told the BBC that one of the leading contenders is GRU General Andriy Averyanov. It is likely that Putin needed time to secretly organize the transition. This would explain why he waited 2 months before getting rid of Prigozhin, he added. Emily Ferris of RUSI observed that Moscow will have likely learned its lesson that personalities like Prigozhin, with their own dangerous ambitions, are a wild card, adding that any new Wagner leader would likely be someone handpicked by the Kremlin. What will happen to Wagner's troops in Belarus and Ukraine? For much of the past year, Wagner was Russia's most effective fighting force in Ukraine, with its troops successfully taking the eastern cities of Soledar and Bakhmut after bloody battles. But Ms. Ferris said Prigozhin's death was unlikely to seriously impact the course of the war. Wagner troops have been out of action in Ukraine since the rebellion, and their troops stationed either in Belarus or absorbed back into the Ministry of Defense. So the impact immediately on the Ukraine war, where the Russian forces are still holding back the Ukrainian counteroffensive, is likely to be minimal for now, she observed. She added that it appeared unlikely that Wagner troops would return to the battlefield in Ukraine, at least in the short term. Thousands of Wagner fighters followed Prigozhin to Russia's western neighbor, Belarus, following an aborted armed revolt against Russia's top military brass in June. On Friday, Belarus authoritarian leader Alexander Lukashenko set up to 10 Wagner fighters would in the next few days be in the group's main camp in Osipovichi, southeast of Minsk. Wagner lived, Wagner is alive, and Wagner will live in Belarus, no matter if someone would not like it, he was quoted as saying by Belarus state-run Belta news agency. He was speaking shortly after satellite images analysed by BBC Verify had shown that several of the tents at the camp were being dismantled. The photos were taken by the US-based Planet Labs company. It is not clear exactly when the work began and whether occupants of the tents are housed elsewhere in Belarus or have left the country. The US-funded Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty Media Group reported on Thursday that as many as 101 of 273 tents in the camp had already been taken down. Addressing the issue, Lukashenko said only extra tents were being removed as there was no need to have so many of them. Still, the future of Wagner fighters is unclear, as many Belarusian, Russian and Western experts argue that Lukashenko is de facto President Putin's puppet, obeying his orders. At the same time, some reports on social media suggest that several Wagner fighters have already made explicit threats against Putin for what they allege is his role in Prigozhin's death.